Let's do it this way. Okay, let's call to order the planning committee meeting. It's a minute to go, so Tuesday, October the 7th at 4 o'clock. A motion on the minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Our next meeting will be October 21st, right in this very room. And the first item we have is an application by Sandstorm Farms Limited for an agricultural land reserve non-farm use, sand storage and truck parking at 14671 Williams Road. And we've got Kevin and Josh on it, and the recommendation is there. Okay. Kevin, your mic is live.
Great. Good afternoon. Nothing further to add to the report. I would like to highlight the following two committee members. The application before Planning Committee is an ALR non-farm use application submitted for the subject site at 14671 Williams Road, and proposes to use the eastern 5 hectares of the site for the storage of dredged river sand, with commercial truck parking proposed for the remaining western 3.15 hectares of the site. Staff are recommending that the ALR non-farm use application be denied, as the proposed uses are industrial activities that are best located in industrial designated and zoned areas. Furthermore, the subject site is located in the ALR, designated and zoned for agriculture, with official community plan land use policies supporting and prioritizing farming. The subject proposal is not consistent with these OCP policies. A detailed technical analysis has not yet been completed as part of the staff review of this application. This ALR non-farm use application is being presented to council for consideration to obtain direction on the proposed land uses for the subject site. If the proposed land uses are supported by council and the ALC, a rezoning application will be required, and all technical matters related to the proposal will be addressed, including a traffic impact study and required infrastructure and roadworks resulting from the proposal. Happy to take questions from committee.
Oh, okay. That's staff's perspective.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. All right, Councillor Heed.
Yes, I do have several, if you can just bear with me, several concerns of staff's report. And I guess my, based on what I'm told here, is not necessarily in support of the recommendation. So would you read out for everyone's benefit staff's recommendation? Just read it word for word.
The recommendation of the staff report is that authorization to forward the agricultural land reserve non-farm use application to the Agricultural Land Commission for the storage of sand and commercial vehicle truck parking by Sandstorm Farms Limited be denied.
Be denied. And then we've heard that we would like this on industrial area, truck parking, or sand use. Then we've had this, let me just deal with the truck parking part for a second here. We've had this referral, my understanding, in front of this council prior to me being here. Total almost 8 years. 8 years with the problem of truck parking. Trucks are parking, and I'm going to have Mr. Corrado come up and answer a few questions in a minute. Trucks have been parking on fertile ALR land because there's nowhere else for them to park. Fertile ALR land, where we get an unbelievable crop. There's nowhere to park. Now we're trying to find something that's going to address a long-standing pioneer in Richmond that is well used throughout Metro Vancouver. And you're coming forward saying no to begin with. I guess my rant here to start with is that that's not staff's job. Staff's job is to give us context, not control which way we vote. And maybe we're going to have to do a fundamental change in our bylaws and here in Richmond on our policies and procedures on when staff reports come forward. Their job is to give us context, not control the vote. Now, Mr. Crado, I believe I saw Mr. Crado in here. I've got a few questions on our situation that we have here in Richmond. If you could just bear with me for a moment, Mr.
We
Crado.
got 3 chairs. Mark, can you come forward, please? Thank you.
Mr. Crado, what's the number of commercial trucks that we have registered here in Richmond? Because I wasn't sure whether it was 5,400, and I was talking to Councillor Hobbs. He thought it was more than that.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, staff from the bylaw department don't track the number of registered trucks at the moment. That program was administered by the UBCM and is no longer administered by them. But I understand from a previous report from transportation that it numbers in the thousands.
In the thousands, I believe. We had some documentation, Mr. Chair, recently with respect to the numbers.
Yeah, we did have a report a couple of weeks ago when we looked at putting parking in industrial areas. I think it was somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000.
So-
Am I not correct, Mr. Crowder? Somewhere in there?
To the chair, that sounds about right.
Yeah, well, amazing how we forgot the numbers all of a sudden.
And we came up, and I know Mr. B's here in the room, we came up with, we're starting to look at it. We've identified 50 to begin with, and I think another 70 locations that they can park on city property. So, Mr. Crado, what's the magnitude of these commercial vehicles parking on fertile ALR, and what's our enforcement like with respect to that?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, the magnitude is significant. We've had recently one property where there will be more on this in a memo going forward to council where we received a ruling of $140,000 record fine. And that was specifically in regards to commercial trucking violations on ALR land. We've had instances of certain properties where they've operated up to 40 to 50 trailers on a single property before. And we've had tens of thousands of dollars of tickets being issued for contrary to the zoning bylaw specific to commercial trucking being utilized on ALR land.
And given your probe into this, what happens with the land when we have these vehicles parked on it? What happens?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, the range of issues can be quite extensive depending on what type of damage is done to the soil. It could involve extensive remediation. Often unpermitted kind of aggregates and soils are brought over to make it so that the ground can bear the weight of these vehicles. So we are often looking at an extensive cleanup cost that can have some environmental impact as well.
So the property you talked about where you've got a significant fine with respect to that, who's responsible for remediation of that piece of property so it becomes something that we can grow vegetables on?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, most often in this specific case, it's the property owner.
And do we have any bylaws with respect to forcing him or her, the owner, to do it, or the corporation?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, we do have bylaws that make it a prohibition, a violation, and then typically for this type of matter, we would pursue provincial court prosecution, and that would come out of a ruling from a judge, but often we get agreements and pleas to have that cleaned up before it comes down to a judge's ruling. In this particular case, it took us going to provincial court. Multiple appeals were filed. We were victorious in all of those appeals, and the cleanup, there was a settlement that was agreed to, and then there was fees that were paid, and there will be a cleanup as well.
Now, can you just give me briefly the truck parking problem, or you, or someone in our planning staff, regionally, how big of a problem is this? Because I've seen various initiatives, whether it's coming from the city of Surrey, Metro Vancouver, or even further out the valley, of them trying to deal with this specific problem.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I can't speak on behalf of the Agricultural Land Commission. However, I can say that staff level discussions have surfaced that similar issues we're experiencing in Richmond are definitely impacting other communities, particularly with a large ALR allocation within their communities. So I think it's reasonable to say it's a broader problem throughout the province.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
You done?
Corrado. Just a couple, no,
Okay.
I'm nearly done, Chair. Just bear with me for a second, please. I want to put some closure to this. When we talk about, Mr. Eng, when you talked about us putting these trucks on industrial property, how much success have we had in doing that in Richmond?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, there are a number of sites that are already designated and zoned for truck parking in the city, including in the 1600 block. There are a number of applications that are already proposed. As you did reference earlier as well, Council did recently approve a pilot project for truck parking on a number of industrial roads in the city. I believe in total it amounts to a number of 63 spaces in total. There was a rezoning application that was considered by council for first reading last month that also included an additional, I believe it was 13 stalls for truck parking, also within the 1600 block. So there are a number of existing zoned lands that already allow for truck parking, and there are other initiatives and pilot projects underway to further support that.
That's a 16,000 Block River Road, correct? 16,000.
16,000.
Thank you. And I guess I'll just finish off here as, Mr. Chair, for now I'll finish off. There's no perfect solution to this. We've got a sand business that's river sand, the best sand you can get, that's utilized throughout Metro Vancouver. It's utilized by our farms here in Richmond. It's utilized by our builders here in Richmond. It's got an outstanding reputation. We've had a long-standing business here in Richmond. And when we have an opportunity, and there's no perfect solution. There's absolutely no perfect solution. We're never going to get everyone pleased on this, but that's our route to failure if we're trying to please everyone with respect to this. But we've got a proposal in front of us that addresses significant concerns here in Richmond. One is keeping a longstanding, if I can use the term, pioneer business in servicing throughout Metro Vancouver. One is dealing with a significant situation that we have failed to deal with for multiple years, and that's on truck parking. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's try to get to specifics. Somebody shut me up. Because we've got 5 speakers and people online, so that we're going. Councillor Liu.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. So if we were to approve this, the whole property gets rezoned. What would it be rezoned to?
Through the chair, the application before committee is the first step in the application process, which is an ALR, non-farm use application. If it is endorsed by council, it would proceed to the Agricultural Land Commission for a decision. If the decision is to approve the non-farm uses, the next steps would be a rezoning application. Through the rezoning process and that technical review that we described earlier, we would look at the appropriate zones and uses that could be applied to this site, keeping in mind that part of this proposal also involves reclamation of the site back to agriculture. So that also has to be considered in the permitted uses in the zone. So the zoning would have to respond to the very specific components of this proposal.
Okay, but generally it would be like
It would be an
commercial,
industrial-related zone.
something.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Liu, it would be a industrial zone with the allowance for agriculture and the allowance for the permitted uses that that would have been granted as part of the non-farm use application.
Okay, so the entire property would then be taxed at the new rate, right? And then it was also going to be subject to the drainage utility charge, right? Because I think about another piece of property across Richmond, it's a driving range, and because the driving range drives the zoning, the entire property, even though the 75% of it's farmed, it still gets charged at the higher rate, and it gets hit with the drainage, even though there's barely any paving on it. This won't have necessarily much more paving on it. It'll still essentially be permeable, but it'll still be subject to the drainage utility, correct?
Well, who's shutting these off? Leave them all on, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, what I can add to Mr. Ng's comments is, at this point in time, we don't know exactly what the zoning of the property would be. Should the application be endorsed by council and approved by the ALC, we would work through a number of those issues as we review the proposal in greater detail. Certainly at that time, we can look into considering what, if any, additional impacts there may be to taxes, drainage fees, et cetera, as part of that review.
Okay, but because the whole property would then be subject to all these different fees and charges, not like, even though they're farming part of it, the whole property still gets charged at the new rate.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the proposal as put forward by the applicant does include the property being used entirely for both truck parking and sand storage. So there is no agricultural component of this proposal at this point in time.
Okay.
But that, again, we can work through those details should the applicant submit a rezoning application in the future.
Okay. I drove by it yesterday. There's significant blackberries growing on it right now. And then there's the house on the western portion, right? So we approved this application for sand storage in the past, and it was initially approved, and then it got hung up somewhere in at the ALC level. So I was at UBCM a week and a half ago, and I had 2 meetings with ALC people, and I don't think there's a lot of appetite to be taking stuff out. So I'm wondering, can the applicant split the application, split the sand storage and the truck parking as 2 separate applications? I feel like they're gonna have better luck with the sand storage if we were to approve this. I like the idea of being able to park trucks on it, but I think they're gonna have trouble at the ALC level. I'm fearful that they'll have trouble at the ALC level. Can they split it? Is that something we can just allow at this point?
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Liu, the application before committee is based on the proponent's submission of both uses, truck parking on the western portion, sand storage on the eastern portion in one application. If it were the pleasure of committee to want to have those uses separated, staff's recommendation would be that the application should best be revised to reflect that, as it would be unknown what sort of, if you do one and you don't do the other, what then happens on the other part and vice versa. So that would be our guidance on that.
Okay, I don't want to drive the bus on it. I just want an opportunity for the applicant to put forward their best application, if you will. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, let me just, Mike?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Liu, should council choose to endorse it, they could choose to split it out to suggest that the portion of the site that's currently used for truck parking be used for agriculture. However, we would need to go back to the applicant. Oh, sorry.
Okay, Wayne, there you are.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Liu, in terms of the application before you, there was a discussion with the applicant prior to the application coming forward as to whether it would be possible to split the components out. The decision was to proceed with a comprehensive application. In terms of the Land Commission's review of the application, the Land Commission would have the ability to approve both components, a single component, or put conditions on any of the components included. So council would retain the discretion to split the application. If the application is forwarded as a comprehensive application, the Land Commission also has that ability.
So we're not, I was worried that if we sent it as is, but they had a problem with one piece of it, specifically the truck parking, that it would kill the whole thing. So the ALC has the ability to cherry pick what they like out of it or approve the whole thing if they agree with it.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, that yes, that is our understanding.
Thank you.
All right. Now, wait, Michael, you just give me a minute there. Right, you're on.
Thank you. Through the chair, to have a few comments, questions to staff. First off, I really appreciate the staff's surveying through our existing city strategies, such as the Farming First strategy and the Industrial Land Intensification Initiative, that clearly point out that this proposal goes against these strategies initiatives, including the existing official community plan. So I think it is a valuable recommendation from staff to have something recommended to go forward, or in this case denied. And it still is up to council to go either way. But I do think staff, they're in there with the data, with the reports, the full analysis. So I think it's a wise move on behalf of council to have our staff tell us what they think. Next thing about this question to staff, under the history of activities, on our page 8, it talks about the right to farm, which is a provincial legislation, supersedes the city's environmental sensitive area development permit. So they cleared the land, it says, in 2021, and no further activities have happened on site. I too visited on the weekend, saw the piles of blackberry, because when you remove the trees and other top vegetation, you're only going to get the quick growing invasive species to dominate the surface vegetation, and that's what's there now, 3 years, 4 years later. My question is, if they did this action and then didn't farm it, and in this case make a proposal to not farm it at all, is there any recourse to their action of clearing the ESA that they have to return it?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, as part of that ESA deep development permit exemption, the applicant had provided us with information indicating that it was their intention to farm those lands. Under the Right to Farm Act, as noted, the ESA designation does not apply to those lands for the purposes of agricultural use. In order to support legitimate farming activities, there is no further restrictions that are placed on the property owner as it relates to that ESA DP exemption.
So I'll follow up on that, ask maybe a different way. So the OCP technical briefing that we have a little bit later today, we have a new proposed ESA map, and this site is marked as being an ESA going forward. So if they then said they had intention to farm, now show that there's no intention to farm, and just tell me if I've got it right, they still don't have no recourse, no requirement to do anything to restore the ESA. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, should this application be endorsed and should the ALC approve it, further rezoning application would be required in addition to a ESA development permit for the site to consider any existing high-quality environmental assets that may be located on the site, and to propose an appropriate compensation and mitigation measures to address the environmental issues or concerns with the site.
Okay, great. So that means that staff have documentation on the square footage that was ESA, and if it gets to that point, that there will be that compensation conversation in the future. Okay, thanks. Next question I had is kind of in relation to the information from staff we just got this afternoon that highlights all the other areas where there's industrial zoning where sand operation could occur. I note back in decades past, it used to be publicly accessible to go to Triangle Beach. And I recall lots of sand operation happening in the back and large trucks going along what was then a very bumpy, pothole-filled road. Now it's none of that, so it's not accessible by the public. There's a much better quality road going in there that could probably handle heavier trucks. And there's still a lot of sand operation remnants, I guess I could say, going on. It would be much easier to pipe in sand when there's no public accessibility, when there's only industrial uses, no other public uses. And I have read the report and heard the comments that there's no interest by the applicant, but perhaps denying this site, maybe that would open up the possibility for them to consider something that might be a better use of their land and ideally better for their operation, because it is so important, and provision of sand for the community, place to park trucks for the community. Yes, I heard from council that there's trucks being parked on fertile land, and no, that's not the solution, and no, I'm not trying to push trucks to park in those places. I think what we need to is get more stakeholders involved that have land that could be utilized for parking far more than 130 trucks, because they're underutilized industrial lands that already exist. The problem is the communication between the stakeholders and the landowners and potential leaseholders. So I don't think staff need to comment, because I think it's obvious that they know there's more areas where this could occur. So, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thanks for the report. I think that I do understand why the recommendation is to deny, and I think that is spelled out with the existing policies and the ALR and OCP and land use. So I understand that, and I'll just say that, you know, I've seen it a couple times in my short time on council where staff recommends, you know, denial of something based on policy, because that's what you're going to do. You're going to bring something back consistent with the policy. So it is up to us to decide whether we go along with that recommendation in some situation or if we vote a different way. So I'm okay with that. The Food Security and Agricultural Committee looked at this issue. What was their recommendation, and can you comment a little bit on the rationale that was attached to whatever their recommendation was?
Through the chair, to Councillor Hobbs' question, ultimately the Food Security and Agricultural Advisory Committee did endorse the application. It was not unanimous support, but it was endorsed in terms of supporting the application to move forward to the Agricultural Land Commission. I believe the discussion is provided for in attachment 7 in terms of the excerpt of the minutes. There certainly was a discussion about options available to the applicant around other sites, why this site had to be, or the impacts of truck parking and sand storage on the site in terms of its long-term ability to be used for agriculture. But ultimately, the decision and recommendation from the advisory committee was to support the ALR non-farm use application.
Sure, yeah, and I understood that. It was kind of the rationale, other than reading the minutes. I thought it might be interesting to hear a little bit about it, but I'll move on to, I mean, one of the complications I see with this, aside from the OCP land use ALR things, is that it is two parts. essentially like two uses. And as a couple of people have commented on, that is probably a little bit of a complicating factor for some people. So now Councillor Liu brought up the point about the ALC and whether or not they have the ability to separate the issues out if they so choose to do so. And the answer through Mr. Craig was yes, they do. So that's interesting to know. The follow-up question on that, though, is when it comes to a non-conforming use of this type, another example perhaps, is that something that the ALC, I wouldn't say typically does, because I'm not sure how many non-conforming use applications have kind of two distinct uses, but is there any history of them doing that we know of? They have the authority to do it, but my question is, have they done something like that?
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Hobbs, I think the Agricultural Land Commission, through their review of any number of applications across the province, get applications of varying complexity and scope, sometimes involving multiple non-farm uses, some of them related, some of them not related. So I think that the commission would have a necessary experience in dealing with applications such as this.
Okay. Thanks for that. And I noticed in the documentation that the application is also supported, well, historically, I think with the previous application too, by a number of major farms and farming kind of groups within Richmond. And I think it was mentioned here, am I understanding that about 25% of the product is actually used for agricultural purposes when it comes to the sand?
That's correct. That is an approximation provided by the applicant, subject to a number of things related to market conditions and items. But yeah, approximately 25% of that dredged river sand is directly used for agricultural applications.
Okay, and what happens, let's say this application is approved by council and it goes ahead, and let's say that the ALC approves it as it's presented. What happens at the end of the term, which I think is 25 years? What is the requirement then?
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Hobbs, so assuming that the commission and the city endorse the application, and with the general provisions outlined here, there would typically be a security bond that we secure. That's, I think, an estimate of approximately $850,000 would be held by the city as a guarantee to ensure that the reclamation activities, as outlined in the submissions, are undertaken by the applicant. And through the rezoning, we would actually implement and secure an implementation plan as to how that farm reclamation plan is to be undertaken, which would include regular monitoring and check-in plans and possibly registration of legal agreements, items such as that. So there would be a more detailed implementation plan developed as part of the rezoning.
Okay, thanks for that, and that's a very thorough answer. For somebody listening, or maybe who hasn't read the report though, I think what you're saying is it would be a requirement that it be returned to farming.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thanks very much.
Carol?
Thank you very much. I have a few questions. First of all, thank you very much for the map that you sent out and the explanation of all my lots of questions. I won't go into all those, but I do have others. So I understand from farmers that if you put sand on the ALR land, it doesn't actually hurt it. Down the road, it can be remediated fairly quickly and easily. But what about gravel that you would be required for trucks? How easy is that to remediate?
Through the chair, in terms of the matter of gravel, the consulting agrologist for the applicant has identified that that gravel can be removed and the reclamation activities undertaken to achieve a certain class of soil-based agricultural production that would result in viable agricultural land. I think through the technical review, if this advances to the rezoning, we would want additional information related to other matters about contamination, items related to potential contamination from the truck activity in particular, on the site.
Like
and
gas,
things-
oil.
Yes, items like that, whether there would be parameters to ensure those items are contained or how those items are managed on the property. So we would get follow-up information through the rezoning about
And
that.
according to the report, it would go from class 5 to class 2, which is a better class of farmland, 25 years from now.
That's what their reclamation, through the chair to Councillor Day, that's what their reclamation plan proposes.
Okay, so we have a nice map here that shows all the ALR land, and it's just right in the corner. What are the chances, if this was to go industrial, that it would affect the rezoning of neighboring properties that are ALR? I guess there's spin-off effects.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, there are potential impacts to adjacent properties. What the non-farm use application does is it still keeps it within the ALR. So there is no change in the overall longer term land use of the property. It will, as we've indicated in our report, these uses are best identified and located on industrial zoned and designated lands where these conflicts or adjacency impacts can best be managed.
So we understand there are between 5,000 and 6,000 commercial trucks registered in Richmond. Where do they park now?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that's a difficult question for myself and Mr. Eng to answer. That being said, council did recently provide for, I believe, 63 spaces available on city roads for truck parking through the truck parking pilot program that was endorsed by council last month.
Yeah, it's just such a, I mean, we're never going to be able to, I don't see how we'll ever find parking for 5,000 trucks in Richmond. But, okay, so I understand from the previous conversation that we can separate the east lot from the west lot. Is it better to do it at this point, or is it better to let the ALC do it?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, should council wish to split the two uses, it would be council's decision to do so, or direct that occur as part of the application and consideration. Depending on the recommendation then put forward by council, that would have to also then be considered by the ALC. And as Mr. Eng and Mr. Craig mentioned earlier, the ALC would then have its discretion to choose to either approve in part or in whole the proposal.
Okay, and then, like Triangle Road is kind of a skinny little road, and it's been used for years by people who go to the dump and people who go get sand. How would it be, would this project affect it any differently than the truck traffic that's on it now? I'm thinking of degrading the road and maintenance.
Through the chair in response to Councillor Day, through the rezoning, there would be a comprehensive traffic impact assessment done to examine that exact question, including other impacts to surrounding road networks servicing the area. If there are identified deficiencies in either the road design or potential long-term maintenance issues, we would have those addressed as part of the rezoning in terms of works, upgrades, and infrastructure works in the area.
So if you make it part of the rezoning, does that mean that the applicant would be responsible for some of those expenses?
Through the chair, there would be costs associated with the proposal, so that's correct.
I wonder if they're aware of that. So in April 17th of 2018, the application was denied by the ALC. How different is this application from that application?
Through the chair in response to Councillor Day, the primary differences between the application considered in 2018 versus the one today is the addition of the commercial truck parking component. So that was not previously part of the 2018 proposal. In addition, with the 2018 proposal, there was the retention of the farming on that portion that's being used for trucks, so that's no longer a component. There's some other additional technical items related to the time limitation. So previously, the ALR non-farm application in 2018 did not specify an end date. This one particularly identifies a 25-year window. And finally, I think there's a clearer picture from the applicant about when their lease terms would be expiring on the site next door. the Montrose Properties Industrial Development, which I believe they've communicated expires at the end of 2026. So those are the primary differences.
Okay, and then in your response, I'd asked about the lot to the south, which is, I believe, city-owned, and whether there were any negotiations. That one's far closer to the river, but I understand that the applicant wasn't interested in leasing that property.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, as part of the previous application that was considered by council, the applicant did meet with staff from our real estate department to discuss the potential opportunities for the leasing of those lands or an arrangement. And as part of those discussions, the applicant did indicate that at that time they were not interested in pursuing either a purchase or lease arrangements for other properties.
Okay, and then the Port of Vancouver letter dated way back in April 26th of 2019, of course, doesn't have any mention of the truck parking, but it's supportive of the sand, basically. Has there been any follow-up communication with the Port of Vancouver on behalf of the city or the applicant?
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Day, I'm not aware of any additional discussions that the applicant has had on that particular matter with respects to the application before committee. In terms of staff's discussion with the Port or Vancouver Fraser Port Authority on this particular site, there has been some broader discussions with Vancouver Fraser Port Authority over the matter of truck parking and those things, but not specific to this application.
Well, we know that the sand operation is critical. I mean, we need it. Number one, the sand is useful. Number two, it helps to prevent the need for dredging in that area. So I'm sure that's why the Port of Vancouver is supportive of any dredging sand lot in the area. But they're not stuck on this particular property. They just want to make sure we continue the operation. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I believe the correspondence that's referenced in 2019 makes reference to a number of dredging operations that provide critical services to ensure the Fraser River remains navigation safely. In terms of whether they would, this use can be considered on other locations, that's something that would have to be followed up. And we would need to directly engage Vancouver Fraser Port to see what their position is on that.
I think that's kind of an important question because when it gets right down to it, if dredging of sand and removing it from the river has gone down since 2019, and that's a long time ago, then this is more relevant. If other operations have now started to do the same kind of process, then it might be less relevant. So I think that reaching out to the Port of Vancouver would be an important step. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Galanders online, and then I want to make a few comments. Councillor Galanders, you're on.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just a quick first comment about, some people keep mentioning 5,000 trucks, but isn't the vast majority of, I'm not saying that there's not a problem with truck parking, I know that there is, but I don't want people exaggerating it. It's the vast majority of people who have a truck, it's parked in front of their business, correct? It's parked in front of their own stall, in front of their own warehouse. Thousands of trucks are parked in front of the business which they serve. And we only have a problem with somewhere under 200 trucks that need parking on the street. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, the considerable majority of the trucks cited in that 6,000 figure are cube trucks, and they typically are parked in close proximity to the business. I believe within that data, there was around 780 semi-truck trailers. So those would be more long-hauling trucks.
Right, yeah, okay, and then the study that we've just approved for off-street parking is going to accommodate about half of what we assume the need is, and then we're looking at those parcels along River Road to one at a time come forward and take some of the burden off. Where were we at with the numbers on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, I believe they talked about, the study talked about an allocation of 63 parking stalls, and it would not accommodate what the lion's share of the registered commercial vehicles that were cited in that transportation study. But I do understand we do have our colleague from transportation that could speak more specifically to their work in terms of looking at other locations as well.
Yeah, so still lots of work to do on that. So yeah, thank you. And I don't deny that we absolutely need more truck parking. But with regards to this location, the ALR issue aside, which I think is a big issue, have you not done even a preliminary view of what the trucks would do in this area, you guys? Because I think that having the information of even just a broad, can this area, this street handle 130 more trucks a night based on 6 Road? And Cityway, we've had complaints from farmers for years that they cannot get out of their properties on Cityway and get down Steveston Highway with the traffic backup that there is, and with the overpass with the tunnel, with the 2 lanes on Steveston Highway east of the 99. Can we even handle 130 trucks?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, as the proposed land uses are not consistent with the city's OCP or zoning and contrary to the Agricultural Land Commission's regulations, that analysis was not conducted as part of this work because there is a fundamental issue of land use compliance. Again, should this application proceed and subject to various approvals, we would work through those details with the applicant.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I agree that the fact that it just doesn't comply with our policies at all and that it's on ALR, that's the reason for the non-recommendation, but it just sounds like there's a bit of an appetite for this application to be forwarded based on what I'm hearing from some of the members on this planning committee, and it might help to have even a memo for Monday that could help guide the decision, because to go ahead and say, oh, sure, let's see what the ALC says, and then they approve it, and then it turns out that we absolutely can't accommodate that many trucks, and it's going to be a nightmare for the community and the neighborhood in that area of East Richmond, then I think we're doing a disservice to not have that information. But just give that a thought for Monday. Question about, and the Agriculture Advisory Committee, it did endorse the proposal. It was definitely based on the need for the sand. So I think that they took the part and parcel of the sand. The truck parking wasn't considered a benefit to agriculture. What that property has been trying to do, and farming that east side, having to excavate the peat and put in this expensive drainage, there's a number of issues with that. I think they would have a very hard time farming that side, from what I understood from the Agriculture Advisory Committee. But using sand as a use for now could be a good way. And then the sand being later, some of it removed and then mineral soils and composted added on top of it could be a really good way to make that land farmable without having to excavate the peat. And that also has the benefit of keeping the carbon in the storage in the soil. But the west side is being farmed, and if you look all down that road, there's many properties being extensively farmed along there. And when we talk about fertile versus infertile, my understanding is the couple of properties, the one on Westminster Highway and the one on 6 Road that are currently illegally being used as truck parking, I don't think they're any more fertile than this property. Do you have that information?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, I don't have the information as it relates to the other properties' agricultural capabilities compared to this site. As you had rightly indicated, the site is currently being leased to a vegetable farmer and is used for vegetable farm production.
Yeah, and it's got farm status. So to justify sending that farmer off, getting rid of his lease, and graveling over that fertile farmland for temporary truck parking, I just don't think it's going to fly with the OCP. I don't think it's going to fly with the people of Richmond. Definitely there's some benefit to the sand, a lot of benefit to the sand, as you can see from the many letters of support from the farmers. And, you know, basically, one question that was asked at the Food Security and Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting is, if the land can't be used for farming now, then how could it be used for farming later? And the issue is cost. So it's going to cost money, about $850,000, to get this soil farmable. And that's a lot of money. And so the sand operation could inevitably help pay for that. And so that couldn't be very harmful. But the truck, possible pollution, the gravel, which is much more hard to remediate, is definitely a problem, in my opinion. So I had the same questions as Councillor Liu about, you know, do we need to split apart the application? But if the ALC is able to, you know, look at it and make their recommendations, then, you know, that would be up to them. But I have one more question, and that's just, you know, with the soil fill applications, how sometimes they come to us to be approved to be forwarded to the ALC. But then there's that other mechanism where they can, I forget what that technical term is, where the landowners can just apply directly to the ALC through a
Notice of intent.
Yeah, can they do the same thing with this property?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, they would not be able to do so in this instance, as the notice of intent is applicable only for agricultural use.
Oh, right, okay. So for agriculture use, they can do the notice of intent. Okay, so if we deny it being forwarded to the ALC, they have no other way of applying for it?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, if they were proposing to farm the property, they could then apply to the ALC for a notice of intent.
Okay, so they could, knowing that we don't support the truck parking and we don't think it's going to work for our plan, they could continue on with the farming on the west side, submit their farm plan, and submit how the sand will benefit, and go that route on their own.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, if I may, just to address your earlier question about information for Monday with respect to like truck volumes. Unfortunately, we do not have that information at this time as part of that application. So staff would be unable to provide any additional information at this time aside from what's already in the staff report.
Okay, that's fair. But I mean, anecdotally, just, you know, walking down that road, it's quite narrow. And just knowing what we know about the issues of people being able to leave 6th Road and Sidaway and try to get out of Richmond in that area, I think that the vast majority of trucks need to be more on the 91 side of things, personally. But I mean, if we don't have the information, then we could only speculate.
Yeah. Are you all done? Okay, Laura?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much.
Okay, good, okay. Okay, we've all had a go at it. I'll just ask a couple of questions. The ALC, if this goes forward, you've recommended denial, but if it went forward in its entirety, the ALC would make a decision on the project in its entirety, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
They wouldn't, well, you can do this with this half or whatever. It would be one piece. Here's the application, we make a decision. They have the jurisdiction to make that decision. They say, this application's okay, go with it. Nothing else we can do.
Through the chair, once an application has been forwarded to them from the local government, yes, they have full jurisdiction over the decision making, which could include, as Mr. Craig noted, approval of everything, approval of certain things, and applying whatever conditions or restrictions they see fit on the application.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that we have to do a technical analysis, okay, our technical review. What are these our rules, and what is that?
Through the chair, to the chair, in this instance, the technical review would include a fulsome consideration of the proposed impacts of the development on city roads, infrastructure, et cetera. So that would be standard and is done as part of any
So we do that
rezoning
all the time?
application. As part of any rezoning application, that's correct.
We do?
A full,
Yeah, I've never seen that in a report saying we did a whole thing on. How long does that take?
through the chair to the chair, as part of the review of the rezoning application, it can vary, and it depends on the level and quality of information that we do receive from the applicant as part of that initial rezoning.
Okay, all right, I'm not gonna get into it and say what we should do. I think people have the right to apply for what they're in, and I don't think have the ability to tell people what to do in any of them, even though some of us might think we do. I see this as, we as a city have two crises. We need sand for the whole community, unfortunately, and it's an ongoing thing. We see it every day when we do preload, et cetera. And we have a truck solution, a problem with a solution put in it, and it's a partial solution. It's not the best solution, and it never will be, as it was mentioned earlier. So obviously, those are the basis of which I'm going to have to make a decision on. I believe you mentioned in the terms of the truck, and we like to hide behind it. Just for the record, we have 63 spaces that we have agreed to in the city out of 6,000, 63. There are 780 semi-trucks. Those are the ones that are a problem on the road. And those are the ones that are already on agricultural land, hiding in behind barns, covered up with tarps at night, et cetera, and agricultural land, which we don't have. So we do have an issue, and I think I want to stay with facts. This was approved once before. We have two committees that approved it, so somebody is in favor of it. And what we do, it would be my suggestion that, to be quite frank with you, and I'm going to move that the application said that the application be forwarded to the ALC for their consideration as presented to committee. So that it's this committee, so I'm moving that, okay? That we're not changing the application at all as presented by this committee, here at this committee. So it's been moved in second, so it's on the floor for discussion to move it forward to the LC to be reviewed by them in its entirety of what we've got in our package, as we've done. Carol, let me just. Thank you very much. Hang on. There you go.
Thank you very much. I was going to make a referral a motion that we refer it back because there's missing pieces. One is an update from the Port of Vancouver regarding the truck operation and where we're at with other sand operations. Two is a traffic study for the 130 trucks that will be on Triangle Road, 6th Road, Stevson. The option to split the proposal into two. One being the, I think, 13 acres of sand lot, and then the rest for potential truck, because I think this is two separate issues. And an update on other land options, as staff have sent us out, maps showing other areas that could be used for both the sand operation and also potentially for parking. I mean, I don't think we're there yet. And I agree with Councillor Liu. If they put this forward the way it is, it's probably going to be denied again from the ALC. So if we want any chance of having this be approved in one form or another, we should get it right at a council level. So I won't be supporting the motion to go forward. But if somehow staff can come back with the answer to all my questions on Monday, then maybe I'll support it. But we're missing pieces of the pie today. And we're making an uninformed decision. So I think we should get it right the first time. Not only for us, but for the applicant, so they're not, waiting like they did last time. I mean, it was like, it took how many years? April 17th, 2018. So it's been 8 years. That's basically 6 years since the last application. And I think that, let's try to clean this up a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, the motion's on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, it's, we don't have Councillor Al? Okay. It's carried with Councillor Day opposed. Okay, so we'll put it its entirety forward, okay? All right, next, thank you, staff. Okay, so it goes as we've got it, okay? All right, appointment of an approving officer. Mr. Bishop is the approving officer. Motion moved and seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you very much. And the housing agreement amendment application for Alderbridge Way. Do we have anything to add? Okay, motion to move, seconded. Carol, you have questions? We are going to you.
Going upstairs for our workshop. So there's 347 market ownership units and 21 lemur units. If those lemur units were proposed today, how many would there be? If this development came to us, because 21 is not a lot. My point is with the new rules that we have with the 15%, would there not be a lot more 21 lemur units than there is in this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Day, I'm not sure I don't have that information at my fingertips.
Okay, when it comes to us on Monday, would it be possible to get that information? Because I'm kind of reluctant to allow for the higher rent, given there's such a small amount, 21 lemur units. So convince me this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Okay. Hang on. Yep, you got, I'm a little slow on the computer here, okay. Yeah, go ahead, you're on now, okay.
Point of information, I believe with the changes in the bills here in the province, there's no requirement for lemur units. So if you were starting this from day one, today, there'd be no requirement for lemur units. Is that correct, Mr. Newman?
Okay, Mr. Craig has the floor here. There you go.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I believe what you're referring to is that within the transit-oriented areas as defined by the province, there is a restriction on the city's ability to use density bonusing on the minimum densities imposed by the province. While the province has removed the ability for affordable housing to be secured through density bonusing, they have given local government the ability to use a new tool called inclusionary zoning, which would allow us to still secure affordable housing. City staff are currently reviewing that tool and will be subject to future reports to council.
Are you okay? All right, hang on, Carol. There we go.
In the reports that we're going to be reading in an hour or half an hour, it was 6,753 new units in 5 years, and they want 75% of them to be rentals and 45% of those to be low income. So that's actually more than what we're doing currently with lemur. Isn't that true?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I believe what you're referring to is the housing target order that was recently issued to the city and the associated guidelines. And yes, those guidelines do require or suggest that the vast majority of new housing units in the city should be rental and below market rental.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, it's been moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you very much. There are no matters of support. Move adjournment. And we're upstairs. Okay.